My name is Andrea Reyes, and I wear a few different hats. I am actually the chair of the New York City Fair Trade Coalition. I'm also a small business owner, Bernadette. We work with artisans in Uganda, making items from upcycled materials, accessories, home goods. And I'm also a professor at 5 different universities in New York City. I missed class today to be here, okay? Who's grading my papers? I teach international trade and marketing. I teach trend analysis and product development, retailing, whatever else they throw at me. So I was just mentioning earlier, I break a lot of freshmen hearts when they come into fashion school and want to learn about shopping and retailing, and I show them the true cost. Oh, right? But then they say I can never shop at H&M again, and I think my work here is done. If I can get... Thank you. So tonight I do want to focus on the work that I'm doing with the Fair Trade Coalition. I've been the chair there for about 1.5 years now, and the Fair Trade Coalition is a group of small business owners similar to myself, and something new, something we call fair trade advocates. So I wanted to talk to the entrepreneurs in the room. I imagine there's a lot of budding entrepreneurs here. And I wanted to start with the problems that the fashion industry has, because I know with whatever problems there are, that means there's a lot of businesses potentially we can start, right? So did you know the majority of the clothing that you are wearing has passed through poor female brown hands, who at one point thought they were going to a factory to maybe gain independence, but had kind of traded one master for another, I hate to say. The fashion industry is the #2 polluter in the world after the oil industry. And out of those women, 70% of the total workforce is run by men, so less than 25% of leadership roles are held by women. So I'm here this evening to tell you about the sustainable fashion movement. The movement is largely composed of disgruntled ex-fashion industry employees, changing the way they consume clothing and teaching other people how to view it differently. So different solutions to combat the many problems of the fashion industry has created a new platform in New York City. So we have slow fashion being one of them. So we can do pattern making in a certain way. We're going to use all the scraps so there's no waste. Another thing is we are having new fabric technologies. So we're actually making fabric from orange peels. We're actually growing fabric from bacteria that you would make kombucha, and a lot of weird and interesting alternatives to stop using plastic as the main source of fabric. And my favorite is clothing swaps. Become a fashion disruptor. Wear secondhand clothing and vintage as much as you can. So how does fair trade play into the mix? We all know fair trade coffee, and we know chocolate, but fair trade fashion is lesser known. What does it take to qualify a fair trade item? One single garment can be composed of many different materials, buttons, trims, zippers, and they come from all different sources and all different countries. So what we have to do is tracing the supply chain. It's not easy whether it's a fair trade garment or a regular garment. If a t-shirt was composed of fair trade fabric or upcycled fabric and had good labor practices, is it considered fair trade even if it was upcycled and we may not know the source? If the garment had chemical dyeing or other processes, can it be considered fair trade? Quickly, we can go down the rabbit hole of ethics standards and what I like to call sustainable shaming. Sustainable shaming, when one reduces, diminishes, or dismisses another for not being green enough, for not being sustainable enough on a personal level or organizational business level. I've shamed before, given a side eye to those who use straws, scoffed at the leather, vegan leather that is really plastic. That makes me sad. I could probably name a few more examples. It's not easy to sit here on my high horse. After realizing I was not the only one participating in this sustainable shaming, I knew that the Fair Trade Coalition had to be a place where we were inclusive, there was no finger pointing going on, and we wanted to bring people together with solutions. So call it whatever you'd like. sustainable fashion, ethical fashion, fair trade fashion. But for us at the New York City Fair Trade Coalition, we aim to work with people who are constantly wanting to question their ethics. I know firsthand from working with artisans in Uganda the unintended consequences of doing good. I remember at 21 marching into East Africa, proclaiming, "I will create change, I will be the change, and you will all change." Very American, right? I'm sure many of you have heard the saying, "Africa, you do not bend Africa, Africa bends you." And it's been 10 years since my first trip, with about 8 trips in between, and yes, I've learned to bend more and more. I see problems and challenges through others' eyes. To put down my American expectations and ideals, so often we forget the problems of fair trade is trying to solve inequality, generational poverty, lack of confidence in education, and these are problems that are deeply ingrained in all of our cultures. So what do? We ask ourselves questions, we actively listen and learn. We admit our mistakes immediately and confess we often have no idea what we are doing. So that's what I'm doing with the Fair Trade Coalition. I gather groups of people, we expose ourselves to uncomfortable truths surrounding environmentalism, patriarchy, socialism, capitalism, development, trade, beauty, authenticity, ugliness, and truth. We do this to gain new perspectives and ideals, new partnerships to problem solve. From this, we have created some exciting new initiatives. At the New York City Fair Trade Coalition, we consider ourselves, as I said, fashion disruptors. We became fair trade advocates. We created this advocate, and what it does is a tool for people like you to now become activists. So what we do is our fair trade advocates, they go and cover different events all throughout New York City. They now have a platform. They go to an event, "I'm so-and-so on behalf of the New York City Fair Trade Coalition, may I interview you?" And sometimes that leads to a follow-up interview, and we're pairing students, advocates with those who are in higher leadership positions. So my goal at the Fair Trade Coalition is to distribute the power because it's a movement. And a movement can't be restricted by one person being the gatekeeper and approving all the things that happen. So I would rather our movement be a messy, a little disorganized, something where each individual feels empowered and feels as though they're on their own journey of learning more about fair trade and learning more about sustainability. So we started something else called Start Your Own Fair Trade Fashion Brand. I love this. We just started it. And what we do is we're helping people start their business plan. So we do a business plan writing workshop. And right now we're in just starting our second cohort, but we hope to have a digital one or a virtual one, so it may be available to you from the comfort of your own home. We are also testing out new ways how to sell fair trade products and tell the story. We have our first silent auction. April 13th, and I'm very excited about this because each designer, we're doing at an art gallery, and each designer is going to have a piece, and next to the piece it's going to have a fair trade principle. So as you move around and bid on your item, making fair trade accessible to more people because we'll have a lower starting price, and it's going to be a fun experiential event where people are learning about their items and viewing it not as fast fashion, but things that they know the story behind it and they're investing in these pieces. And of course, it will have a clothing swap. And lastly, the big dream that I have, a clothing swap for members. Kind of like a gym membership, but instead of picking up heavy things, we're going to be picking up some heavy ideas. So come for a workshop about labor rights, or a DIY party learning to naturally dye, or maybe even a fair trade book club. Oh, and by the way, you'll get to swap as much clothing as you want. In closing, I always like to leave with a proposal, an actionable item. I know firsthand there are people within your community wanting to get involved. Some of them, all of them, are sitting right next to you. So what are you going to do? Wait for somebody to organize and invite? No, we don't have time for that. We're going to tell people what to do. We're going to get bossy. We're going to ask for help. Start small, invite everyone you know, and I promise you too can ignite your community. Thank you.